He exposed his affair to everyone. I stayed silent and left. That's when he cracked. The room echoed with laughter that didn't belong to her. She stood frozen, invisible among a crowd that once called her family. Her hands clutched the tray she was holding, the glasses trembling with the weight of betrayal. His voice rang louder than the rest, proudly boasting about the woman he now called the real thing, as if the years they spent together were a temporary lie. The woman beside him smiled with a confidence carved from conquest. Everyone looked at them, clapping, laughing, mocking her silence. And yet she stood still. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just left the tray on the table, nodded politely and walked out. The moment the door shut behind her, the air outside felt thinner, crueler. The sky was bleeding hues of dusk, as if mourning the unspoken words she left behind. Her heart throbbed, not from heartbreak alone, but from the effort of holding herself together. Every step down the road felt like walking through glass, but she kept going, refusing to look back. She had nowhere to go that night. Her apartment was filled with memories now too painful to face. The streets welcomed her like an old friend, harsh, cold, but honest. She sat on a bench, watching life move past her, people holding hands, children laughing, a world she once knew but no longer belonged to. She ate nothing that day. Not because she wanted to suffer, but because even hunger felt more bearable than the ache in her chest. A couple passed by offering food, but she declined. It wasn't charity she needed, it was closure. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed every word, every moment, every lie. She remembered how he used to trace the lines on her palm and promise forever. How he used to whisper dreams into her ears while holding her like she was all that mattered. Now those dreams were shattered, and the echo of those promises screamed louder than his betrayal. By morning, her eyes were swollen and her soul bruised. But still she stood up. She didn't cry in public. She didn't curse him. She began to walk, not toward the past, but into something uncertain. She found a temporary shelter and started looking for work. Days turned to weeks, and though the hunger sometimes roared louder than her determination, she survived. A small diner hired her to clean tables. The pay was minimal, but it was enough for bread, enough to breathe. Her quiet presence caught attention. Not because she sought it, but because there was something haunting about her silence. She moved like a ghost, her eyes reflecting the storm she carried inside. The manager often asked if she was okay, and she'd nod. She was not okay, but she was alive, and that was enough for now. Each night she went home to a mattress on the floor. She'd stare at the ceiling, counting the cracks like scars. Memories came uninvited. His laugh, his touch, his betrayal. But she no longer flinched. She let them come. Pain, after all, was a reminder she could still feel. One night, a woman entered the diner. Dressed expensively, polished nails, eyes sharp like blades. She recognized her instantly. The one who stood beside him, the one who was worth it. The woman didn't order food. She just stared and asked softly, "Do you ever regret not fighting for him?" There was silence between them for a while. Then she responded, "No. I regret giving him so many chances to lie." The woman left without a word. Rumors began to trickle into the diner. He wasn't doing well. Business had collapsed. His new love was now distant. He was drinking more than sleeping. People whispered that he kept calling out for someone in the middle of the night, but not the one he chose. They said he looked older, weaker, as if regret had taken the place of pride. She listened without reaction. Her co-workers talked often about karma, but she never smiled. There was no victory in someone else's downfall. Her strength wasn't in his collapse. It was in her rising. Weeks became months. One evening, a young girl entered the diner crying. Her face bruised, clothes torn, soul shattered. She reminded her of herself. She offered her food, a seat, and silence. No questions, just warmth. And for the first time in months, she saw herself not as the victim, but as the light someone else desperately needed. Helping others became her quiet healing. She began volunteering at a shelter. listening to women, men, even children, all carrying different versions of the same pain. She never spoke of her story, but her eyes told them they weren't alone. On her way home one night she saw him, standing outside her building. Unshaven, eyes bloodshot. He barely looked like the man who once mocked her with arrogance. He didn't speak at first, just stared, and then in a voice cracked by guilt said, "You didn't say a word that night, why?" She looked at him, her voice steady. "Because I wanted your actions to speak louder than my pain." He broke down right there in the rain, sobbing, apologizing, pleading. But she stood still just like that night. The same silence, but now it held power, not pain. She turned to leave. That's when he screamed, "I lost everything. I lost you." She paused, looked back once and said, "No, you gave everything away." She didn't look back again, but he did every single day after that. He watched her from afar, rebuilding herself from the ashes he lit. He saw her smile again, not because of him, but in spite of him. He tried reaching out, calls, letters, messages through mutual friends. She never replied. Not because she hated him, but because she no longer needed closure from someone who had already been erased from her future. The world eventually forgot his face, his fame, his pride. But they never forgot her story. Time passed like slow-moving thunder, heavy, distant, and loud in its silence. Her world had shifted into something both fragile and fierce. The pain had softened into wisdom, and the love she once gave so freely was now guarded behind quiet strength. She had found meaning not in revenge, but in purpose. Life wasn't easy. Bills still piled up, the nights still got cold, but her spirit was no longer broken. Each scar she bore was a silent medal of survival. The man who once exposed her to humiliation was now a ghost wandering among the ruins of his own choices. Word spread that he had tried to rebuild, but the world no longer trusted him. Investors withdrew, clients left, and even friends who once toasted his success now avoided his shadow. The woman he betrayed her with had vanished the moment the riches disappeared. Now he sat alone in an apartment far too big for his loneliness, drowning in what-ifs and if-lies. Meanwhile, she began working part-time at a center for domestic trauma survivors. She had no professional degree, but her lived experience gave her more empathy than most textbooks could teach. People connected with her. They told her she had healing in her voice, and light in her silence. She still remembered hunger, so she made sure no visitor ever left empty-handed. She still remembered being invisible, so she made others feel seen. But beneath her calm surface, something darker stirred. A part of her had never fully healed. Not because of him, but because of the truth she never admitted to herself. She was still scared. Not of pain, but of peace. Peace felt foreign, temporary, like something that could be ripped away at any moment. And so she never allowed herself to fully breathe, always waiting for the next wave of pain. That wave came, just not how she expected. One evening she received a letter. No return address. Just her name in shaky handwriting. Inside was a photograph. A picture of her, taken weeks earlier while she was working at the center. On the back, "I see you. I never stopped." There was no name, but she knew. It was him. She didn't panic. She didn't cry. But something in her chest tightened. He was watching. Not begging this time. Not crying. Just watching. Days later, another note appeared under her door. This one said, "Let me make it right. One last time." Her hand shook for the first time in months. She didn't want anything from him. But something about the way the message was written, it felt like a warning, not a plea. She went to the police, but they said there was no threat, just words. She knew better. Words had power. Words had destroyed her once already. That night, she stayed at a friend's place. When she returned home the next day, the lock had been tampered with. Nothing was stolen. But on her bed lay another photo. This one from years ago. Her and him smiling, happy. Burned edges. Written in red marker. "I still remember what we were." She filed a restraining order. It was approved, but deep down, she feared it wouldn't stop someone who had already lost everything. The shelter put her on leave for her safety. She hated it, being sidelined again, being told to wait, to hide. So she made a decision. She would face him. Not with fear, but with finality. She found his location through an old friend. He was renting a basement apartment in a part of town that looked as broken as he did. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She wanted this moment for herself. Goodbye. Full stop. When she arrived, he answered the door slowly. His eyes, once full of arrogance, were now sunken, desperate, hollow. He didn't smile. He just stepped aside and let her in. The apartment was dark, cluttered, suffocating. Bottles on the floor, walls covered in old photographs of them, torn, taped, rearranged in chaotic patterns. It wasn't love. It was obsession. She stood still. Why are you doing this? He didn't answer right away. He walked to a chair, slumped into it, and stared at the wall. You left, he said. Without yelling, without tears. You left like I didn't even matter. That silence, it killed me more than any slap ever could. She replied calmly. I stayed silent so you could hear the truth. You didn't lose me because I left. You lost me because you let go first. He turned suddenly, his face twisted. But I want it back. We can make things right again. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, she said. This is over. It was over the moment you exposed me to the world like I was your shame. I came here to tell you. Leave me alone. Let me live. He stood up, eyes wild now. If I can't have peace, you don't get it either. He moved toward her. But she was ready. She pulled a small device from her pocket, recording everything. I've been recording this since I walked in, she said, voice calm but firm. If anything happens to me, this goes straight to the police. He froze. She walked to the door, opened it slowly. This is the last time I'll ever speak to you. Next time it's not a warning. It's prison. And with that she left. Outside the air felt different. Freer, lighter. She didn't look back. She went straight to the authorities and handed in the recording. An investigation began. He was warned officially. The restraining order turned into full legal action. Soon he was forced out of his home, monitored. His online accounts shut down for threats and harassment. The final suspense came weeks later. One night she received a package. No note. Just a small handmade wooden box. Inside, a torn page from her old journal, the one she'd lost during the breakup. The entry was about how she once dreamed of marrying him, of growing old together. And beneath the page, a single bullet. It wasn't meant to hurt her physically. It was a message. Final twist. A horror from someone who no longer saw life as worth living without her. The news came the next morning. He had taken his own life. No letter. Just a photo of her, smiling at peace, taped to the wall. She didn't cry. Not because she didn't feel, but because her tears were done. He had written the final chapter, but she was still alive, still healing, still here. That night she went back to the center, held someone else's hand, listened to someone else's story, and smiled softly, not because the pain was gone, but because she had survived it. And now, she was the light others searched for in their own darkness.